but I think this was said very well. The most successful people I've met and continue to see, they have a deep insecurity that they are not good enough, or they may not be good enough, but they have a ton of confidence. In your 20s, I would say be super.
Hey folks, you're most welcome to the show. And once again, we have an amazing coach. I would say not coach only, an amazing entrepreneur over here. His name is Tanner. So he has started his journey being a fitness trainer to multiple eight figures in online business. He is the founder and CEO of Elite CEOs. He has generated over eight figures in the online coaching world. I won't only say that he has generated eight figures online uh, figures, but he has impacted more than thousands of lives out there, right? And he has also trained thousands of elite CEOs until now to make over five figures, six figures, even seven figures as of now. And his clients have done a combined of more than $350 million in sales. And more I say, lesser it would be. Dear guest, once again, you are most welcome on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for the intro. That's very nice.
Right. So it just took a little of research to more about you. I'm like apologizing for whatever is missed over there. Right.
Yeah, no, I'm
So moving forward to the question over here, what we are over here for, it's like the audience is super excited to know, let's say, if they are new in this industry, as you started your journey, how would one could start their journey in the online world?
Yeah. So it's actually a lot more simple than I thought it was when I was starting. So I always tell people to start in one of three industries. So you got fitness, so health, you've got wealth, so helping people make money or, their businesses. And then you've got relationships. Those are usually the big three, where if you can show someone how you can increase one of those three things in a positive way, they're going to work with you. So for me, I started in the health industry because I'd been a trainer and I was a bodybuilder and I did stuff like that. Once I did that, to get my first clients, all I did is I started messaging people on Instagram. So I started with my followers, my comments, my likes. Once I ran out of those, because some people are going, well, I don't have a lot of followers, I started doing what I call cold DMs, where I would just go to hashtags on Instagram and I'd start reaching out to people that way. And that's how I got to about $50,000 a month. So the biggest thing from that, and why some people struggle that I've seen, is they're just not very good at communication yet. They're not very good at speaking to people. And obviously, building a company, you have to have good communication to get people to give you their money. If you're not good at communication, it can be very difficult. But that was all I did. And, once I got there, I started adding more things. But all I did is I'd wake up, I'd grab my phone and I'd start messaging people. I'd set up a phone call and I'd close them over the phone. And that was it. I spent a lot of years struggling, but if someone had told me that 2 years sooner, I would have made more money faster.
Right, right. So as you mentioned that people fail to communicate. So what was your big learning into it? Like, how did you learn to communicate with your audience?
Yeah, so it was a mixture. I think I lucked out a little bit. And what I mean by that is when I grew up in a family, I had six siblings. So there was just a lot of communication at home. I was also an athlete for about 10 years. I was pretty much, that was pretty much all I did from about 12 to 22. So I played a lot of sports, interacted with a lot of people, coaches, teammates, etc. And then the biggest thing was actually when I did door-to-door sales. So over here where I'm at, we had door-to-door security alarm cells. So I went and worked for a company called Alder while I was trying to get my company off the ground, and they sell security alarms. So I would go and knock on about 100 doors a day for 7 months. And it's one of the hardest jobs you can get, but you really learn how to interact with people and watch their face and their tonality and, really get good at objection handling. So I think when you go from selling something someone doesn't want, if I approached you in the street and said, hey, you should get this pen. This pen's amazing. 99% of people are going to say, dude, leave me alone. But then I started selling fitness and these people wanted help and it just changed everything. And it was actually super easy. So I think it was a mixture of those three things. But if anyone is listening to this, no matter where you are in the world, if you have an opportunity to do door-to-door sales, I highly, highly recommend it. not for the money you're going to make, but for the skill you're going to learn.
Right, right. That's something what is interesting. As you mentioned, we could pick three niche over here, like any of the niches. It's like a relationship and wealth and health, right? So how do people ensure that they actually can start with any of these three?
I think the first thing is try to figure out where your skills are. A lot of people will say, I have no skills, but if you know anything that could help someone make a little bit of extra cash, it doesn't have to be millions and millions of dollars. Maybe it's extra $500 a month. Maybe it's $300 a month. Maybe you are good in fitness. I think start with where your skills are at and then try to wrap it around that. So here's a outside example. Let's say you go, hey, I don't really know how to make money, or show someone I don't know how to do fitness, and I'm not, I'm 18, so I don't want to give relationship advice. What you could do is then still break down what are your skills and then try to tie back the result to one of those things. So an example a lot of times is people want to be a mindset coach or they want to be a life coach. The reason they struggle to sell that usually is because they don't tie it back to anything tangible. So an example would be, I actually had a client who came in and said, hey, I'm going to help you with XYZ with your mindset. And by the end of the program, if you don't feel an increase of 25% in these categories, and some of the categories I can't remember, but I think it was their job, their happiness, their relationship, whatever it was, then you get your money back. And they could only pick 0, 25, 50, 75, or 100. So he kind of set it up where they had to go up by 25. They couldn't just say, oh, I had a 20% increase. So he set himself up to win, but he also tied back the mindset coaching to what most people care about. Does that make sense? Because if I wake up and do a hot shower or a cold shower, and yoga and meditation, I'm not doing it just to do it. I'm doing it to try to improve my life. And so it's making sure that you tie back what you're good at or what you're teaching back to one of those things. Does that make sense? I hope it does.
Right, right. It does, right? So, moving through the question, like we have got a question from the audience. It's like he has asked a particular question, like you started from scratch, right? And there are people who are starting from scratch. They have no generational wealth. So how can they develop the mindset of that an entrepreneur?
That's a great question. So everyone's a little different. I'll tell you my experience. Probably some of the people listening have grown up in a worse situation than me, but I had 6 siblings and my dad was a teacher. So I had, I also live in America. So there's a lot of stuff you could say that, hey, I've had it easier, and I would agree with that. But when you have 6 siblings on a teacher's salary, it's not the most extravagant lifestyle. I had what I needed, but that was it. And so as I got older, I remember my parents they were disagreeing about, bills and what we were paying for and things of that nature. And so I just remember having the feeling that I don't want to live that way. And so when football ended, I wanted to play in the National Football League. So that would be American football for anyone who's not in the States. I wanted to play in the National Football League. And then I got as high as I could. I didn't get there. And when I came out of that, I wanted to not have to worry about money. And I think the thing that motivated me was, as a kid, I was bullied. And so I had this motivation to not be a loser, and I didn't like people judging me. So when I started my business, part of what kept me going was, one, the goal in mind was, hey, to not be financially in a bad place. Like I want to be financially secure for life. And then 2 is I was really afraid of being a loser. And I wish I had a better word for it, but sometimes you'll see people who are bullied as kids, and it actually helps them because you don't really know why you're bullied at first. So I was kind of a strange kid, I said some weird things, etc. But when you're a kid, that doesn't really make sense to you. As you get made fun of, you realize, hey, I started working out, I started playing sports, I started gaining respect that way. So I said, hey, if I do these things, people won't make fun of me. And so it reinforces those habits. And so I think that did help me as an entrepreneur, because I knew, hey, if I start making money, if I start going this direction, if I build something big, people will respect me more. So I guess to answer the question of what they said is, I think you have to have some type of insecurity or maybe a deep fear. that pushes you more than the uncomfortableness of building a company, because it is uncomfortable and it won't go probably the way you planned. But for me, the mindset I have was, hey, I'm going to either be homeless or I'm going to be successful. And if you're not really willing to do that, whenever things get tough, you're going to fail, or you're going to quit or go another direction. So my advice would be willing to do whatever it takes. Like, truly, don't just say it. Be willing to do whatever it takes. And if you are, no matter what happens, as you hit obstacles, you'll push through. That's how I felt. I don't know if I was born as an entrepreneur, because no one in my family's ever been one. I'm a first generation. So I think it was just that type of mindset.
Right, right. And I strongly believe the question is answered. Thus, it was like that's the question that he wanted to ask, right? So there comes another question from the audience itself, because I just asked them if they have some question to ask. So one of the other questions is like, how a 20-year-old Tanner would start if he had to restart his journey being at the age of 20.
Yeah, well, first off, congrats. Figuring your life out that fast. I didn't start entrepreneurship till I was about 20, like almost 25. So you got a huge head start on me, and that's kudos to you. The thing is, if you're 20, I don't know if I give you any different advice than if you were 25 or 30. As long as you have a cell phone and you got internet connection, you can make money. So I think it would go back to what I said previously, is pick one of those three categories that you have a skill in, or whatever you are good at can teach, tie it back to, health, wealth, and relationships. Start having conversations with people and start trying to sell them. Because that's all it really is. At the end of the day, all you have to do to start making money is find someone who's interested in what you want and then sell them. And as soon as that transaction happens, you have a real company. So I don't think it should be any more complicated than just figure out what you want to sell, start reaching out to individuals who you think would be interested in your service, and then make sales. And if you suck, it's okay. You're not supposed to be good. You are supposed to suck, right? It doesn't make sense. It's like me going and playing soccer. I never really played much soccer. I did as a kid, but if I went and played soccer right now, I wouldn't be nearly as good as I am in American football. And so if you go into it knowing, hey, I'm probably going to suck until I've done this a number of times, it gets easier, because as you get reps, you go, oh, okay, so when I say this, that doesn't work. When I say this, this does work. Okay, when I do this, I get more people booking calls. It's just a process. Now you can speed up that process with a coach. So if you're 20 and you have funds, or you're able to work with someone who's done it, do it. But if not, the cool part is you're 20, you can mess up for the next 10 years and you're still okay. Versus someone who's in their 30s or 40s and maybe they have kids and a family. So when you're in your 20s, I would say be super reckless and super, aggressive and dangerous, and take chances, because the worst, what's the worst thing that can happen? Not much. You probably can live at your parents', pay very low rent. You can live off Cheetos and ramen. It's a good life. So I would say take advantage of it. And that was the advice my mentor gave me at 25, because as you get older, you get more responsibilities.
Right, right. And that is something interesting, right? So moving forward to the question over here is like, what do you think that is the biggest learning, like three biggest mistake that you committed during your entrepreneurship?
Ooh, three biggest mistakes. It's great. These are great questions. I love them. I think the first one would be I didn't hire someone sooner. So you have to understand my background. Because I was bullied, and then I started having success in sports and school and with girls and dating, I became very egotistical. No, I don't think it was over the top, but I had a lot of confidence, because I went from the kid who was bullied to pretty popular, and I was doing very well. And so when I got to business, I'm like, I don't need anyone's help. This will work the same way. But when you don't know what you don't know, you can't say that, right? There's things you don't know. And so if you try to do it on your own, it's going to slow you down. So number one is I would have hired someone sooner. Number two is I think I wouldn't have pursued collegiate football or American football. And the reason is that I learned a lot of great skills in high school and pushing myself, but I wasted, getting to the National Football League, for example, it is the equivalent of being, Cristiano Ronaldo and, you know, Messi, right? Just really good soccer players. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go for your goals, but when I saw the level of talent that went to the National Football League, these guys are 6'8", they run 4.5s, you know, they're 300 pounds. You and me, we're not 300 pounds. You know, we're smaller guys compared to that. And so if I had stopped a little sooner, I think I could have had the same level of skills, but I could have started a business at 18 or 19 and I'd be a little farther ahead. So that 20-year-old who asked that question, man, I'm jealous. I would give up all my money right now. I'm 31, just turned 31. I give up all the money I have now to be 20 again with what I know, because I'd be even farther ahead if I started over, right? So be grateful where you're at and just like enjoy it. Like, this is the best time to be alive. Like, you can't get any better than that. And then I think number 3, mistake. I don't know. I don't even know if I can know what they're. I guess the only other thing I would have, you know what? I'll say this. For my third mistake, I think trying to overcomplicate paid ads or paid advertising. And what I mean by that is whatever you're doing organically that's working, so for free, you want to do the same thing with paid ads. And what I was doing is I was doing this thing over here with messaging, and then I went and did something completely different over here with paid ads. And that was a mistake. All I had to really do was, hey, this is working here. How can I make that work with paid ads? Because ads amplifies whatever's working, and it also amplifies what's not working. So would have hired someone sooner, would have maybe not gone as far with sports. Like, I would have stopped maybe after high school. And then the third one is I would have done the same thing with paid ads I was doing organically. So for example, if I'm messaging people organically and it's working, how can I replicate that with paid ads? So maybe a messenger ad versus running it straight to a page. That's basically what I mean with that.
Right. And I really it is stuck in my mind that you mentioned that the people who are in their 20s, they should take the advantage of their time period and they should learn a skill, right? So what are the traits of an entrepreneur and what are the skills it requires to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I've heard this. This is not quoted from me, but I think this was said very well. The most successful people I've met and continue to see, they have a deep insecurity that they are not good enough, or they may not be good enough, but they have a ton of confidence that they can get there. And so anyone who's listening, if you have that drive inside you to go prove yourself because you think you can do it, but you're not sure, you're kind of, hey, am I good enough? Can I do this? That's where I feel a lot of people can become very successful. That ties into probably the second thing, is just persistence, or stubbornness is maybe a better word. Is it's not going to go your way all the time. So the people who are the most successful are the ones who can do the same thing for the longest time period. And so I've only been in business full time now for about 5 years, but it's crazy how many companies went in business and went out of business during that 5-year period. I think we've only had one competitor that still is in the space. And so that goes to show you that it's hard, right? And so if you can do something for 10, 15, 20 years, over time, if you're really doing it to the best of your ability, you're going to get so much better than everyone else. And that's what's going to make you win. Because if I've done something for 10 years and you've only done it for 2, I should be better, right? So I think being persistent, being stubborn. And then number 3 is sales. The reality is you can become a millionaire without having a good product. If you're a smooth talker, or you can get people and convince them, that shouldn't be the goal, but you can become a millionaire if you're good at sales. To become a billionaire, you also still have to have a good product. But if you want to be just a millionaire, a multimillionaire, you can easily do that. I want to say easily, but you can do that just with sales. So right. I think it's like tap into your insecurity, make sure that you learn sales and you're good at communication, and then just being persistent and stubborn. All the other stuff is just skill-based. And so if I'm here and you're here, complaining about me being here doesn't help you. But I truly believe over time you can get there, because the cool thing about business, it doesn't matter what your race is, how tall you are, what color you are, who your parents were, none of that. It's all in the head, right? It's thinking. And so it levels the playing field a little bit more than sports, where, this guy's 6'8" and you're 5'5". there's not much you can do, so that's how I look at it.
Right. And moving to the one question that I really would like to ask is, it's just that a lot of people, when they are moving forward in their entrepreneurship journey with the one thing that they have chose, so they find that it's not working for them. So what they it actually is stuck at, it's the shiny syndrome object. That's something people stuck at, right?
Yep.
So what is your point on that, how one can keep going with the faith of what is working, what not?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I actually, this was the biggest thing I struggled with when I started a company. So let's break it down. When something doesn't work, why does it not work? It's only two things, right? You're doing the wrong thing. So you're trying to dig a hole with a pen, let me know how that works out. Or B, you're doing it the wrong way, right? So more times than not, when people are starting a company, it's not that they're doing the wrong thing typically, it's that they're not doing it properly. So I'll give you an example. If you're on a sales call and you start insulting someone and they hang up on you, most people will say, oh, sales calls don't work. Sales calls work. You're just doing it the wrong way. And so when I was starting a business, that was always the hardest thing, because when I wasn't getting results, I would just sit there and go, man, like, am I doing this wrong? Or is it the wrong path? Like, are they telling me to do the wrong thing? Like, light your grass on fire to make it grow. That's the wrong thing. But if I'm supposed to water my grass and I only do a little drop, I just take a little drop and drop it. That's not enough, right? That's the wrong, I'm not doing it properly. So those examples, I'll try to make it more simple, is just most people have to understand they're usually following the right path. There's enough information out there typically where you can follow the right path. Think to what I said. Get on Instagram, message someone, get on a call. That's how I run my entire company. It's not that hard. What's hard is the skill. What do you say? How do you say it? When do you say it? Why do you say it? All those types of things. So if you're struggling to get momentum, a lot of times we go, oh, this is the wrong path, I'm going to switch paths. That's not correct. It's probably the right path, but you're doing it improperly, incorrectly. And so that's where coaching comes in. And that's where getting help is so important, because you have to be able to humble yourself enough to go, I am probably not very good at this and I need help. And it's hard for a lot of people to do because we have pride. But I think the note of a successful person is the smartest people I know understand how much they still don't understand. The people who think they know everything are some of the dumbest people I know. So even with the success I've had, I'm still to this day getting coached, taking calls, hiring people, because I know there's more things that I can learn. So sorry, that was a little long answer, but I hope that summarized it well.
Right. I strongly believe like this is the mind-blowing session that is going on. The people who are watching over here right now, just drop in the comments like if it blew your mind, right? So moving to the next question over here, I really would like to ask, like, as you already mentioned, that you can also ask uh, what kind of conversation that you are doing with those billionaires out there. Like, I'm curious to know.
Yeah, so I guess context around that is I've transitioned out as CEO of my company, eliteCEOs.com. I still own it, still advise with it, but I'm no longer running the day-to-day operations. And the reason for that is what I've seen as you get to higher levels is it's more about the vehicle than how hard you work. So an example is, Uber or Uber Eats. The reason the app does really well is it's not very hard to use and there's really no fulfillment. The fulfillment's done by someone else. So I just get on, I hit a button, they pick me up, they drop me off, that's it. With coaching or consulting, there's a lot of fulfillment, as I'm sure you know. I mean, you're doing stuff like this all day long. And so it gets harder to scale past a certain point, because the bigger the company gets, the more the different levels of skill of people that come in. So if everyone came in and had the same level of skill, service-based companies could grow a lot easier. The problem is people come in at an 8 out of 10, a 1 out of 10, a 5 out of 10. And that's why results are harder to keep in a straight line, because There's more levels, there's more people coming in, the skill levels are different. So the reason I'm having those conversations with billionaires is I'm trying to decide on what my next vehicle will be. And I'm trying to decide on a vehicle where I can work the same, work just as hard, but it has a higher ceiling because it's easier, if that makes sense. So I'll give you a quick example. There's a company, I spoke to a woman named Kim Perrell, and there's a company called Chief.com, and they scaled to 100 million in 2 years. Here's the business model. You have to be a woman. You have to be an executive for 15 years, and it's a community, but if you don't fit that criteria, you can't join. So the fulfillment is really zero. The fulfillment is they all talk to each other and police themselves. They do have a couple live events, but that's it. And so think about it. They're making, 5 times more than my company right now with probably 10 times less effort. Isn't that crazy? And so that's why I'm having those conversations, because what you find is once you've learned those intro skills and you've built and skill stacked a little bit, the difference between the billionaires and the multimillionaires is the vehicle. It's not always how hard they work. They're smart, don't get me wrong. But, Sam Bankman-Fried with FTX, until he, got all those charges, it's not that, obviously, let's just pretend he didn't do all the things he did. But the reason he became rich so fast was not really that he's that much smarter than everyone, I don't think. I'm sure he's a smart guy, but it's the vehicle was just at the right time, right? It's just the right vehicle at the right time. And so that's more what those conversations are about versus do this on your sales calls, do this in your messages and those types of things, which is more of what you do at a lower level with coaching companies.
Right. And the session is really insane. Thank you for sharing the valuable nuggets with all the audience who is watching right now, right? So moving forward to, I won't say the last, but the least, it's the question. What is the best advice you really would like to give to the people who are, continuing their entrepreneurship and they feel like, they are on the way, they're feeling like whether they should continue or quit?
The best way to answer that is just to look at my situation. So between 23 years old and 25 years old, I only made $2,000 in my business. Keep in mind, I was working 16 to 18 hours a day. I didn't work any less than 16 hours a day for 2 years. Didn't go out, didn't party, didn't date. I gave up everything. So imagine how depressed or how sad or down I felt putting in that much effort with zero return. From 25 to 27, I made multi-millions. And from 25 to 31, I've done, we're getting closing on 60 million plus. So the difference of what I would have made if I quit, if you think about it, I would have gotten a job, $100,000 a year as an engineer. So the difference would have been around 59, 50, whatever the number is, 50 something million. When I think about that, if someone hears that, that's how you have to think. Because when you quit, you think you're not giving anything up. You think, oh, I'm going to go do this job and it's going to be better. But if you just push a little longer, unless you have a mental disability, you will figure it out. You should. If there's 10 doors and you go through each door, it'll take you longer, but eventually you'll go, okay, this is the right door. Some people get lucky and they choose the right door the first time. Some people might be a little smarter, and so they get figured out a little faster. Some people might have more skills, but I truly believe if you want it bad enough and you work to the best of your ability, you will get there. And you have to understand, people don't want you to be successful, because if you're successful and they're not, they have to face reality that they didn't do what they were supposed to do, or they didn't work as hard as you were, or whatever it was. And so I think when you die, what you'll look back at and feel great about is if you really did truly give your best. And only you know if you gave your best. And a lot of people don't give their best. They think what their best is that's not their best. You think your best is here. This is where your best is. And so if you can just push through that, the reward is looking back and going, wow, I went through hell to get to here. And so I have a lot more gratitude for where I'm at now because I went through the bad times. You can't appreciate the good without the bad. And so when you're going through those bad times, what I would recommend people do and remember is that this is what makes it so worth it. If you're born a billionaire's kid, that's the worst thing that could happen to you, right? Because your life can only get worse. Can you imagine waking up and being, Jeff Bezos' son or Michael Jordan's son? That's got to be one of the hardest things that could ever happen to you, because you can only go down. You can't really go up because you're already at the top. And so I actually think when you're going through hard times, look at that as a reward and be grateful, because you're going to appreciate the good times so much more.
Right, right. That is something crazy. I believe you won't mind asking the last question. Right. Okay. Okay.
Go ahead.
It's just that what is your view on networking?
Networking. So my take on networking is most people shouldn't do it. And the reason I say that is one of the easiest ways to network is to just become successful. When you become successful, people want to know who you are and they want to talk to you. So for me, even when I started my company, I had the mindset, I said, you know what? I'm going to go out and become successful. And by becoming successful, more people will want to know who I am. And that was my take on it. And that's what I decided to do. I don't think going out and spending a bunch of time having coffees and talking to people when you're not making any money is a good use of your time. You need to make money. Once you make money, then you can network. But I'll be honest, most of the connections I made has been from becoming someone worth knowing. Someone everyone's going to probably know, and Alex Hormozy, he's really blown up over the last couple of years. He reached out to me years ago, and I like to think part of that is because I was making some moves. I mean, maybe he just reached out because he wanted to, but I don't think so. I think he reached out because of that. I've had interactions with other high-level players for the same reason. So I think if you can just work on trying to actually build a company, focus on money-making activities, then when you become someone worth knowing, then go and network. But more times than not, we need to do less, learning, and we need to do less reading, and we need to do more action. And if you're not making money, then your actions need to be around money-making activities.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much once again for sharing the valuable nuggets with the audience who has been watching us. I'm really grateful to the audience as well, and really grateful to our amazing guest over here. Thank you so much for joining us and inspiring the audience.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I hope it was helpful, and I appreciate you having me on.
Right. Perfect. It was an amazing conversation. You have shared ton of amazing value nuggets.
Yeah, thanks, brother. I appreciate that.
Right. Perfect.